Evening party people. So before I hop into this, let me just say, if you hate this, let me know. I'm using a different software, which allows me to hook my iPad up and record it to my PC. And I'm doing this because I want to try to use this Apple Pen. However, very good with the computer, very good with the phone, complete boomer with the tablet. Just complete. I've been playing with this, no lie, for like an hour, and I'm still making some mistakes. But we're gonna try to roll with it. All right. So we have this wedge set up on the SPY, right? And the big thing here that's concerning to me is that this looks like a potential rollover. If this completes the rollover, there's nothing more bearish than a failed breakout, right? I've said it multiple times. Everyone knows. So, in the community, that is. But this still is pulling back to a bullish daily EMA, looking solid. Q's different story. Q's looking a little bit more bearish. But if we pull it up and we look at the TTM down here below, this isn't yet concerning to me. We're at a 9.919. We're still getting the positive flows. If we look at the 2-day here, it's still negative, but we are seeing this nice reversal here, right? We are creeping up, and we're starting to get that 2-day confirmation, even with the selling today. I mean, overall, just looking at the daily, this looks like an evening star that basically panned out, tested the upper end of the trend. 2-day inside candle, which is like an indecision candle, can go either way tomorrow. Weekly, also indecision candle can go either way tomorrow. Now, the big reason why I'm hesitant to get short is because we have to remember that earnings is coming up this week, right? And oftentimes, when you're getting these big breakdowns ahead of earnings, they become dip buys before the actual reports. Oh, my friend, you are super annoying. Go over there. All right. All right. Earnings equals good. All right. And so when I see it, the earnings has been really good, and it's projected to be good, not just in the upcoming season, but pretty much the next several quarters, because AI is such a massive spend in GDP, and it's boosting a lot of companies' numbers, especially with the job cuts and et cetera that we've had, which could turn into hiring as companies become more efficient and they get more done quickly. And as they open up new projects and stuff, then they start doing hiring. That's what we've been doing. And I know that's not just that's not just a what's the word I'm looking for? That's not just a single sample that is shown in the data and represented in the data, right? But the big reason that the market sold off is you had the wombo combo of Waller, not Wallin, Waller, and Korea. So they came out and they sold Koreans. Korea came and started selling stocks hand over fist, which now seems to be bidding it up in the after hours. We can see after hours. You know what? Shortly after the close, they sold it off. If we go here to the 15-minute, we can actually see that. The after hours sold it off after the close. Now we're going to pop back up in the overnight as Korea has a bit of a rebound. This is something that we talked about on the weekly report as well. But Waller came out. Waller was super inflationary. Then you have Korea also blowing up at the same time. Looks like a potential bubble. And for Korea, it's literally just like memory stocks. It's not even broadly AI, but it is being bundled with the AI bubble story. But what's going to be important tomorrow that we have to keep on the radar is that we're going to get some inflation numbers, and we're also going to hear from Warsh. And it's important to remember what's going on with Warsh, because Warsh seems to be looking for excuses to cut. I don't see someone who is a supply side economist who's hired a full team of supply side economists who are really of the opinion. It's important to understand because that whole philosophy is that inflation kind of resolves itself. If prices are high, then create more things and prices will come down. You know, they're not going to try to hammer down on demand. They're going to try to ramp up supply. How they're going to do that? They're going to grow, baby. They want to grow. Okay? They're not, this is not someone who is looking to crush markets. So when we hear from him in the morning, I have a little faith that he's going to give us a nice pop on the market. Waller, not so much, but guess what? Waller's not in charge. Walsh is in charge. Walsh now has all these, what are they calling them? Assigned task groups that are doing this research, and they also carry that supply side bias. Even I think Andreessen's sitting on one of the task forces. So these are like actual CEOs, people on the ground that do real things. So that's great. Wonderful. We like that. So that's really all there is to talk about when it comes to the review today. I tried today to try some dip buys off the geopolitical news. And a big thing there with the selling today is I thought we were pretty oversold all day, especially when we look at the 65-minute here. It's a pretty oversold condition. Let's get that off the screen. From the open, I was looking for something like a failed breakdown through here. Was looking for then the consolidation or to find some pop into the close on this. I ended up not getting my pop, and then I had to take some puts on the Qs to kind of cover some of my other bullish positions. And those other bullish positions really came from Shop, which had great relative strength. I mean, this is a failed breakdown from the previous day's lows. So I kind of took some off. I took some profits into the open on that kind of ugly double top there, and then came in and bought the dip when we failed the lows. Took some profits here. Still looking for a continuation. Trend on longer time frames is still very much alive. If we look at the daily and then we look at the weekly, like we're just not getting the confirmation on the weekly. So target here really is like about 137 or so. We're really looking to come and meet like this trend line right here. Which comes to 137, 138. I would like to see a continuation there. I came in and bought ORCL today with size in both the long term and in the trade account. I do think that this story here is really silly when it comes to the negative sentiment on this company. And I guess it's worth further discussion on that topic, quite honestly, because when we think about the AI story as it sits right now and the debates that are being had, you have the frontier models. So you have... Oh, I can't rest my hand on this. Okay. That's fine. I'll just do it like this. We have... Move this out of my way. Back. We'll do AN for Anthropic. We'll do OA for OpenAI. Alright. Then you have GE for Gemini, which is Google's, GR for Grok, right? And these are your major four big boys. These basically, Perplexity is just a non-starter of a conversation. They basically gave up forever ago and just tried to create a package deal with all the other AI models, right? Their search integration is useless. They were obsolete pretty fast. So you have all these companies that are basically mostly feeding into a majority of the revenue from data centers, right? Most of the revenue coming in through data centers goes through these companies. And Oracle in particular is especially dependent on OpenAI, right? And to be clear, I think it's something like 70% of all the data center revenue really comes from these two players. And OpenAI in particular is spending big. Uh, well, Oracle rather is the biggest benefactor of OpenAI. Their bet is OpenAI will fulfill the demand. So let's talk about that demand. How does that demand really seem to break down right now as it sits in this current environment, right? Because frontier models can do harder things that open source models can't, right? So, how is this space developing right now as a whole? And that really kind of breaks down in the way of what tasks you have. So, let's say you have really complex tasks, all right? You're going to need the frontier model. Then you have your organizational tasks, right? Which is like the planning and management of different workloads. This is also best addressed by a frontier model. But then you have your menial tasks. And this actually could be like a lot of things. Even for go to the web and fetch this, pull for this file, check back on information in the database and fact check that this work matches that information. Things like this. Or if you're using multi agents to build like a web page, okay, you could have models that like you take a model and you say, okay, all you do is make links and buttons. Like really menial tasks that they are trained to do just that one thing and do that thing correctly, right? This is where your open source comes in. Open source is absolutely amazing at this. Can do some organizational stuff with on the caveat that you have some ST, which is self-training, okay? But for the super highly complex problems, you still need a frontier model to be basically like the brain of the operations, right? And let me be clear, this is not something you're going to hear from like Walmart. Okay. This is what the most like bleeding edge companies are doing when they're setting up their AI models. Okay? So like this is what we do at NBT. Thanks to all the brainiacs who work for us and all the brainiacs we've talked to kind of make sure we stay up to date on all this stuff, right? So the big fear is that these open source models take the leap to being able to do complex problems. Look, if an open source model manages to get to the level of Fable, for instance, this is the hacker model that it was a crowdsource or was it Palo Alto? I think it was Palo Alto used them, and it actually hacked into found several weaknesses across Palo Alto, and all they do is cybersecurity, where all they do is look for weaknesses. Fable found some that they had never found before. It's also done some pretty crazy stuff in the world of physics as well, solved some string theory problems that have been like dead problems for years. Okay, which is almost like an intuition type of a scenario where this thing is using math to solve complex problems that humans are even some of the brightest humans are even struggling with, right? But it thinks in a different way. It's like a fresh point of view. But if open source can get to that level of where Fable is, even if frontier models tend to get better, if they don't go to AGI, you can make an argument that for most things can now be done with open source model. Like most things, Fable's a very impressive model. And that's just on its own. Think about when you're setting up a structure like this, where you have your complex model, your organizational model, your minimal model. Well, okay, well now what if you got multiple fables? What happens when you have multiple fables? Well, then you can kind of create multiple brains. And you can have a brain that does vision, a brain that focuses on words. And by vision, I mean like images, right? A brain that does words, a brain that reads data. And then if you want to, you can have one that does voice to handle different tasks, right? One can watch videos, one can check the charts, one you can then talk to. So now we're not only dividing the task load with top tier models, but then we grind down on the type of processing that they do as well. Getting even the more complex models to be specialized. Well, if you're running all of this on the cloud, and you could do it all with open source, which means, by the way, there's no token costs. What do you need frontier models for? So this has a lot of people worried about the big bet Oracle has taken, because right now Oracle's in tons of debt, supposedly just for OpenAI. Now here's the problem. This is a very big brain. Okay? Okay? If a company wanted to run this type of structure, it's 10 million tops minimum, and that's probably not even enough, or a minor data center subscription. And keep in mind, 10 million if you're a small business. Like if you're NBT, like that's what we are building to. That's where we would like to be, right? To build all that infrastructure. But if you're a large, that's for small companies. So for bigger companies, these numbers like 10 billion, yeah, it's expensive right now with the current prices, which means you need a data center. Now, most people, they aren't here, and they definitely aren't here. They're just here. They're just running one frontier model, trying to throw it up on a data center and get it to do some stuff, right? Well, even if OpenAI doesn't hit that demand, and even if these other things happen, these very big brains, they're going to these data centers anyways. So, in my opinion, data centers are the best pure play in the AI space. Oracle also coming to a multiple year low. Keep in mind, it still has deals with TikTok, still has a very strong traditional business as well. And still, we are still in the age of need more compute. We needed more compute for software. There was already a plethora of demand. And let's say the language models aren't the future. Well, these video models are getting impressive. And if you don't think there's full-blown TV shows coming out with video models who have way more demand than the language or data models, I mean, demand as in like amount of token usage. You guys might have seen me making some AI videos. I've been making a lot of them. Holy crap, it's expensive. I'm gonna say, adult entertainment and AI nudies. Porn is what took over. Was what really propelled the internet forward. Porn is what ended up creating YouTube. Porn might be what leads video AI, propels video AI to the forefront of usage for AI. and might be what propels us. And it's definitely what's propelling people to build robots in China. Have you seen these robots? What the hell? Okay. So that's kind of my thoughts on why I took an outsized position on Oracle. I feel like it's just regardless of if any of this is correct or which way this falls or which frontier model wins or doesn't win, we end up at needing tons of data centers. And even if OpenAI doesn't fill that need from Oracle, I think there'll be enough demand that others will. So Oracle's my big bet right now at this price. I think it's great. I think even if the market does take a dive, we take a plunge, SPY takes us through the bottom part of that wedge. All right, I'll ride it with some puts. I got plenty of cash. Take me for a ride. Take me through the dip. Give me the rate cuts, and I'll ride it all the way back up, yelling, yippee-ki-yay, mother trucker like a true American. I'm such a boomer with this iPad. Please stop fighting me. Is this going to work? No, that's awful. Okay, zoom in. And then that's on draw mode. Yeah, let me know what you guys think of the iPad, guys. Obviously, I'm learning. But I think I'll learn fast. And I do like drawing stuff. Why does this look so awful? I don't know. We're just going to end it there. God bless. I'll see you in the morning.